everybody, this is Jean here from True Love Quilts for You on a very rainy and gray Sunday morning here in Pennsylvania. We are still at home, of course, like the rest of the world is at home. And this past week I've just been coming into my sewing room trying to really come to grips with this. I haven't been out of the house for 6 weeks now. I'm a homebody, but it's sort of getting to me. It really is, it's getting to me. But anything to stay safe, stay home, stay safe. The governor of Pennsylvania we have stay-at-home, very stringent rules other than non-essential, just like the rest of the world. So anyway, in this terrible time, I came into my sewing room. Again, I didn't want to start a huge project, although my last quilt, my Scrabble quilt, was a fairly large project, but that sort of just flowed out of my fingers. But I had seen a picture on Facebook. It was just a photograph of a lovely bag, and I was looking at it. I tried to look for a pattern for it, but the websites that were taking me, it wouldn't pull up a pattern. So I looked at the picture and I figured it out. I made myself a tote bag. I made a prototype of this little tote bag, and here it is. It's like a little handbag, tote bag. This is going to be my tutorial. Not on this one, I'm going to show you. This was my prototype. I had gotten, it's 35 charm squares, 5-inch squares, that's all it is, quilted. And then what it is, the little magic of this bag here, is you can take this, you can make the ties bigger, and then open up the clasp. I show you how to do the clasp, and then it becomes a very, very large tote bag, fully lined, with a pocket, lovely tote bag. And then you can just do these side tabs up, the side ties up, to make it as big or as small as you want. So I show you on this one. This is my tutorial. I had done that modern, sort of modern graphic black and yellow that I had some charm squares hanging around. So I made that. That's very modern, but look how I made it up in my shabby chic little fabric here. This is the tutorial that I'm doing, a fully quilted, fully lined, no raw seams, a clasp, a pocket, little very large, or if you wanted to make the ties smaller, the way that it's constructed, you make the ties smaller, and then you can make it just into like a handbag size. So I show you every step of the way, pretty much every step of the way, how to fold these in and then make a little bag with my magnetic clasp there that I have. So this is my little tutorial. As I said, I had seen a photograph of it. It didn't have the ruffle. I added the ruffle. I show you how I do the ruffle on the top with this sort of a self-binding on the top. And then, as I said, this just takes charm squares, 35 charm squares. So that's a pack of charm squares is what? 45-inch squares. So this little tutorial takes about 35 to make the body of the bag. I put feet, little gold feet on the bottom of my little bag there. Now, you don't need, I'm explaining it, of course I explain it in the tutorial. I repeat myself a million times. And if you don't like that, then the tutorial's a bit long. You don't have to watch me. But I go through step by step by step. If you didn't want to use the charm squares, putting them all together and then quilting them, you could just use one piece of fabric. And I tell you, I believe it's a 24-inch, a 24-inch wide by 32-inch long piece of fabric that you would need. 24 wide, 32 long. If you're just doing the just doing one piece of fabric that you would then quilt. I made this. I love the idea of the charm squares, and the actual quilting is quilted about every half-inch away from the seams on my little bag here, and it really does give it a lovely dimension. It really does. So these are my, as I said, these are my prototypes. This one has a white clasp, and I haven't done it yet. I'm going to put in a hard, as I do on my bags, a hard bottom base so it's lovely and sturdy. So this is my tutorial for for today. The handles. All you would need, I tell you what you need. What I used with this bag here is a fusible foam. You can use a fleece, you can use batting, but I show you how I've gotten the foam using it because it really does for a handbag making. If you're going to be making any tote bags or handbags, I really recommend the, there's I think, what is it called? Vilene? Something like that. It's a harder product to make bags. So if you're going to be into it, if you wanted to be selling them or if you wanted to be gifting them, I think this is a lovely pattern. And I show you again step by step how I made the handles, how I lined it, how I put on the catch, how I put on the feet. So yeah, and then the difference in how it actually, you know, makes up in the different fabrics. This is very modern. This is again very shabby chic. It could make up, you can make it into a larger, as I said, a larger tote bag. This one, you know, to make it like into a beach bag for towels. It's a nice large tote here. So that's my tutorial. I hope you love it. Again, keep safe, keep healthy. We're just waiting for this threat killer to pass. We're just taking it day by day, trying to keep positive. Lots of positives come out of it if you choose to look at it that way. I put on my Facebook, there's no school shootings. You're not paying on gas. We got like what? We got like 30 days to the gallon. Our car sit. My husband's only been out just a few times, back over to our house that we're trying to sell or trying to get ready for sale, our family home. But that all came to a standstill. That all came to a standstill when this happened. We were going to hopefully be putting our family home, where we moved from in January, on the market. That didn't happen. Everything came to a standstill. We still have just a few little bits left. The upstairs need to be carpeted. Ian and Maxwell went over yesterday and cut the grass because we still have that property. But never mind. One day at a time. Try to keep positive. We're with family. I'm enjoying my time with my husband and Maxwell. Maxwell's doing okay. He's finding it difficult to do any schoolwork online because he's not really in a school program. He's in a program for challenged adults. He'll be 21 in October. And the courses that he's been given, are difficult for him because when he was at the school, Del Valle University, where the program was being held, he was working in the cafeteria. He was working around the campus doing things. So being at home, he's playing a lot of games. We're keeping him occupied. We are connecting with our friends via Zoom very, very much, FaceTime. Our family has a WhatsApp family chat going on, the True Love family chat. We have our Zoom meetings for our congregation twice a week, and then we do a ministry because we usually go door to door. Obviously, we won't be bothering you doing door-to-door preaching work, but we're letter writing to our neighbors, passing on good news that we know of from the Bible, and yeah, we're keeping connected as much as possible. So hopefully you guys are. Hopefully, you know, you'll enjoy my little tutorial. If you don't have anything better to do, you can listen to me. This is probably long, but you end up making a bag, right? Like, this is pretty cool. I think this is a really nice little present to have. Oh, I do have to make the bottom for this one though, even though it stands up beautifully. So anyway, that's my tutorial to follow. I hope you enjoyed. I've taken some still photographs at the back, at the end of it. So yeah, it folds up into a nice little neat package or a big package. So I hope you love it, folks. Again, thanks again. See ya. Bye.
send her my heart covered as a gift, and hope that she'll take it into her side. La 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 la.
So, as I was showing you in the beginning, here is my little quilted tote bag. And I just wanted to share with you, I had gotten these these charm squares. If you can see, I have another pack of charm squares actually. I believe I got these at a shop called Tuesday Morning, and look at the price, $5.99, $6 for 42 5-inch squares. Oh my word! But of course, this little bag could be made with just one piece of fabric. You don't have to mess about putting the charm squares together, obviously. What I'm going to do is, when I made this, I didn't quite take the measurements of how much, if you just wanted to use one piece of fabric. I'm going to address that when I'm cutting out when I'm showing you my lining also, and then the material for my ruffle. I'm not quite sure what it is at this moment, but I will give you the measurements. I'm not going to be making another bag with these charm squares, but that's how they come. And I wanted to show you again. This is my little bag, and I put the little ruffle on the top, and then what you are going to need, which I quite like, is I put on a magnetic attach on the inside, and I'll show you how to do that. Now again, as I was showing you in the beginning, I like the fact that it's sort of a smallish, almost handbag, but then when you go to undo the ties on the side, which I made very generous, I made them very nice and long. If you go and undo them on either side, you can see how absolutely spacious this bag is. You see that? Look how big that bag is. I mean, that is a proper large tote bag for a beach bag. But then I like the fact that it sort of shrinks down. It shrinks down to that size. But I did put a pocket, as I was showing you. I did put a pocket on the inside, nice pocket. And I also, as I always do on all of my totes, I put a piece of card with some actually leftover fabric there, and I tuck that right into the corners to make the bottom nice and firm. I like to do my handbags like that. So there, and then my handles. So I'm going to show you now the fabrics that I've chosen. Again, you can do that either up very tightly, or you can do it just looser. Depends on what look you want, how you're going to actually use your bag. This is done up. Oops, my cutter. This is done up very tightly, and two lovely, nice little bows on the side there. Or that's done just a little bit looser, so you can just get into your bag like that. So that's my little bag. There are my things. I'm not going to use that though. I'm going to be making a different look, which I love. I think I've made several quilts with this line. It's Maywood Studios Heather by Jennifer Bosworth. I have made a few quilts out of this, out of fat quarters and of yardage. But I just pulled this charm square pack from Maywood Studios. It's called Heather, and it's my typical shabby chic, pretty pink green florals. So it's going to be making, this is quite a graphic, modern-looking bag. This is going to be making a very pretty, soft, shabby, chic look, which I just think is delightful, just so beautiful. So I'm using that as my charm squares here. And then what I have pulled is for my little ruffle on the top here, I have pulled this stripe here. I think that goes real pretty. This is just a cotton fabric, a lightweight cotton. That goes real pretty there. So I'm going to put that stripe on the floral. And then my lining, oh yeah, I pulled out this, and I'm going to be using this actually. I had pulled out this fabric for my lining, and it's so pretty. This is like love, all sorts of pretty script for my inside lining to make it pop. But then I had actually, for this lining here, for this bag here, I had put on an iron-on interfacing, and it was okay, but I didn't really need it because of the bag had the stiffener on it, and I will be addressing that. It was a flexible foam that I used, so I was going to interface my lining, but then I found this, and it's like a mattress ticking. It's that much heavier. If any of you know, like a mattress ticking is heavier, and so I'm just going to use that for my lining. I may change it up and put maybe the pocket on it to just bring some color on the inside out of that, line the pocket. But I think I'm just going to be using this with this, and then I have the foam that I will be showing you, and I'll showing you in next exactly how much I will cut of this fabric that I've pulled to make my little bag here. I believe I'm going to do the handles. I'll probably do the handles out of this fabric also. I might, on the handles on this, I did do a interfacing, an iron-on interfacing, just to make the handles a bit more substantial. So I think I'll probably do an interfacing on them. But I think this will be very pretty. So the lining, maybe a pocket, and my ruffle will be there. And my ties, maybe I'll make the ties out of this to bring some color into it. But then my next thing, I'll show you exactly what I cut. So this is a preliminary, what you are going to be needing. And I haven't cut my bits out 100% right now, because I'll show you as we go along what we need. But this is what you're going to be needing to do this project here. Of course, you're going to be needing a pack of charm squares. Now, we're only using 35 5-inch squares. All right, we're only using 35 5-inch squares. We are going to be making a piece of fabric that is 5 squares across, 7 rows down, in a configuration that's pretty. But we're only going to be needing 35. But that's for the body of the bag. 1 pack of charm squares with some left over. For our ruffle on the top, I have cut 2 pieces of fabric, the width of the fabric, so what, 42, 44 inches wide, the width of the fabric by 4 inches wide. We're not going to be using all of that. We're going to be putting it together. But again, as we progress through the tutorial, I'll show you what we're going to be doing with this ruffle. So that's 2 4-inch wide with the fabric. Then for our lining, I haven't cut it yet, but I would like you to get about 1.5 yards of lining fabric for your lining, your handles, and your ties. 1.5 yards, and I will be cutting that afterwards. And then I have decided, I showed you in the beginning, I showed you the previous video that I interfaced my lining on my other bag. I'm not interfacing it with a lining, but I am going to be doing it, I'm going to be quilting the 3 layers, the charm squares, the flexible foam, and an interlining together. So again, I will show you that as we progress, and you're going to be needing about 1 yard of interlining. I've just pulled this. I've just pulled a piece of older white fabric. It's just a plain fabric. It's not going to be showing, but it's going to be giving our bag even more body, because I'm not interfacing the lining. So this is going to be a 3 sandwiched unit right here. Again, when we get to that. So you're going to need about a yard of that. And again, I will show you. I'm going to be making an inside pocket. You're going to be cutting one, whatever fabric, piece 6 inches by 18 inches. That's for our little inside pocket. A fairly good sized pocket. And then what you're going to be needing for this project, you're either going to be using a fusible fleece, which will be a much lighter bag. I like this Flex Foam two-sided fusible stabilizer from Patron. It's a lovely foam just for handbags or for things that really you need it for, like, excellent for home decor, perfect for handbags making, blah blah blah. I really like that. That's Patron FF79F2 Flex Foam two-sided stabilizer. And then, because this isn't as wide as we want for our bag, I have to put two pieces together, and you can zigzag them together by all means. I'll show you as we go along. I use this tape. It's called heat and press tape. It's a glued tape that I just put on there, and then I'll just butt the two edges up together. Again, I will show you, and it just fuses a batting or a stabilizer together. I use that. If you don't have that, by all means, you can just zigzag this together or whip stitch this together, because it's not quite wide enough for our project. So I'm going to show you exactly what I'm going to do now. So what I'm going to be doing next is I'm going to open up my charm square pack, and I'm just going to start laying out 5 blocks across, 5 squares across. I'm going to pull just random, because there's pale greens and pale blues and whites. So I'm going to be doing 5 blocks across and 7 rows down. And as you can see, they're all they all coordinate beautifully. And I am going to do some thought to this. I am going to have some kind of thought when I'm making my putting my blocks together, because it has beautiful pinks and reds and ginghams and creams and polka dots, and I just love that. So I'm just going to do, as I said, 5 across. Oh, so pretty, so very pretty. Has a cream gingham, tan, and little florals. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then lovely green there, and a red to pop in the middle there. Beautiful. I love the red and the aqua together. So pretty. This is a beautiful fabric line. I have used it. I have done this. If you've watched me, you've known that I've used this before, because I just think it's just beautiful, just delightful, really very pretty. So now I'm going to, again, no real rhyme nor reason, just pulling it. Everything goes together beautifully, as you can see. Get some more pink down here. Oh, so lovely, very pretty. I think I'm going to put this down here and put more of a pink in the middle there. Yeah, lovely. That. And let me put this pink over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just going to continue. I'm just going to continue building on this, and then I'm literally just going to go over. I'm not going to bore you. I'm going to go over, and I'm going to start stitching all of my rows together. And again, it's not going to finish that up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not rocket science. You've done this before. It's just putting rows, sewing our rows together. There's a pretty gray, isn't that lovely? Oh, so pretty. And a finish with a green. And there's my handbag. That's my handbag layout right there, just right in front of your eyes, real quick. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take one row. I'm just going to pull my row. I'm going to take this over. I'm just going to just start sewing my rows together. Pretty sides together, a 1/4 inch seam there, all the way down, and then I'll just do every single row, and then I'll just flip and put the rows together until we have one piece of fabric, as it were, a patchwork little quilt sewn together. And then I'll show you, I'll finish that up, and I'll show you then what I do from there. So what I've done right now is I have sewn each row, all of my bits, all of my seams together. I've not pressed anything, just as they've come off the sewing machine, because I just wanted to address one thing. I had pulled fairly willy-nilly out of my charm square, which was fine because they're all so beautiful. But if you want to remember that this part here, this row here, or say these 2 rows, or these 3 rows, and these 3 rows here are going to be the top edges of your bag, okay? This row, sort of in half of this row here, are going to be the bottom. They're not going to show. Now, I love this charm square pack. As you know, the fabric line is beautiful. However, I just rearranged a few things because I really want to showcase these beautiful florals in the body of my bag, which is going to be up here. My little ruffle's going to go on this edge, and my little ruffle's going to go on this edge. So I just changed a few things about. I love the gingham, and the little dots, but they're a little bit less florally, like I want in the body of my bag. So I'm putting these sort of 3 rows. They will not be showing as much as the top ones. One more thing: if you have a directional fabric, all of a sudden you realize, oh no, there's a top and a bottom to it. You want to be sure that this is, again, the top of your bag, and this is the top of your bag. We're sort of folding it folding it back on itself. So if you have a directional print, you want to make sure the directional print is facing down your bag. So if you have a little puppy dog, and here's his feet and here's his head, down here you want these rows that the top of your head is here and the feet are here. The feet are here, the top of your head. The feet are here, the top of its head. So when you put the bag together, your directional print will be the proper way. So that's only if you have a directional print. But again, pull your charm squares if you're using charm squares. Again, this is just one piece of fabric now. What I'm going to do, I am going to set my seams here. I'm going to take my time to set my seams on my rows, and then I'm going to press, as you do, when you want to nest your rows together, I'm going to press these seams, oops, there's my phone. I'm going to press these seams one way and these seams the other way. You must excuse that. And then I'm just going to right sides together, pretty sides together, and then stitch my rows after I set my seams. I have just finished sewing my bag together, and I wanted to show you my next step. As I was saying in the beginning, this is a Patron flex foam two-sided two-sided fusible stabilizer. Now, why I have to piece this is, as you can see coming off the roll, it is too narrow for me to, if you can see here, it's too narrow for my piece. Now, I am not going to be doing it from edge to edge. I'm not going to be doing it from edge to edge like there. Because I don't want this in the seam allowance. But right for now, I'm going to, because so I don't want that in the seam allowance, and I don't want it up here either. Hopefully you can see that. I don't want it up here. So I'm going to cut it about 1/2 inch. I'm going to pull this over about 1 inch over this way, maybe a little bit more than 1 inch there. So there's my edge there. That's about 1 inch, and about 1 inch at the top. Because when we go to sew this, I don't want that in my seam allowance. So if I pull it over there, then I'll have about 1/2 inch, maybe a little bit more than 1 inch. Sort of straighten it up there, so underneath, and then I can cut this, and then I know that it's a little bit smaller. This piece is smaller. Let me just show you. When I sort of split that difference there, as you can see, I won't have that in my seam allowance when I go to sew it. I might even trim it up a little bit more actually. But because this is only that, it's this wide, I need to do another piece down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut another piece off. Comes off the roll this way, say. I'm going to cut another piece off, just exactly the same size. I'll probably just straighten this up with a ruler here. But for now, I'm just going to cut that off like that. So I have approximately two sizes. So I'm just going to straighten the sides up even a little bit less, because this tends to grow a little bit. So I'm just going to take it off. I just don't want that bulk in the seam allowance. And then straighten it up real nice. And then over here. I'm eyeballing it, but it's just so it's a bit smaller than my top. Now, as you can see, I have two large pieces, and if I bring this to here, I bring my fabric to here, you will see that I have to join it. And as I was saying to you in the beginning, you can see that I have to join it. I have that much left over, right? I have about that much left over. So what I'm going to do before I cut it, I'm going to go over to my ironing board. This is nice and straight. And I'm going to use this, what's called heat and press tape. I showed you this in the beginning. And it's a glued tape right here. I have to be very careful because this is a two-sided fusible, and there's no glue on here. So I'm just going to butt these together. I'm going to butt this batting together, this thing together, right like that. Just really nice and really have it butted together so I don't see any air whatsoever. And then just with the tip of my iron, I'm going to be putting it, I'm just going to melt that glue right there. As you can see, I do this with batting. This is a wonderful product, this heat and press tape. I think you get, I don't know, 15 yards or something for like $6. And it's awesome. I used to zigzag my batting together or whip stitch it. This is wonderful. And it just, as you can see, it becomes one really nice when you butt it up against each other. You need a nice clean line there. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to trim this, the size slightly less on top and bottom. I'm going to trim this, then my top. Now, as you can see, I have cut my stabilizer smaller on each side of my top of my handbag, having put it together with my tape. It's one piece now. Now, what I'm going to do is I've laid out my sort of interlining. This is just a piece of fabric. I've just grabbed a piece of white fabric that I'm going to now cut exactly the same size as the top of my bag here. I'm going to cut this exactly the same size, okay? Because what we're going to do now is all we're going to do is we're going to, and there you go. There's my top, my inner lining. What we're going to do is we're going to sandwich. We're going to sandwich. This is just a piece of white fabric that's not going to be showed at whatsoever. It's sort of like a tone on tone. It's fine. It's not, I haven't even pressed that, but that's fine, because what we're going to do is we're now going to sandwich the backing, as it were, of the inside of the lining here, which not going to show, and we're going to actually quilt now our piece, our little bag here. We're going to quilt this piece of fabric. So the batting or the stabilizer is on the inside of there. And since this is a fusible, I'm going to go over and I'm going to press this from the inside out and make it really lovely and straight. I'm going to do that on both sides. I think it's fusible on both sides. I think so. It says two-sided. So then I'll turn it over and I'll do that again. But then what I will do is I'll get my clips here. I'll get my clips. These two are exactly the same width over here. My bottom. I'm going to just sandwich that, and I will not bore you. I'm going to go and I'm going to quilt this after it's all nice and straight. I'm going to quilt about a 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch away from each line. I'm going to do that this way and this way. I'm not going to quilt in the ditch. I'm just going to quilt on either side of this line, and then I'm going to go down that way. And on my prototype here, you can see how it's turned out. It really puffs up beautifully. It really becomes dimensional. In these charm squares really come to life with just a straight stitch across and down. So again, if you wanted just to do if you just wanted to do one piece of fabric, by all means eliminate all of this. You could and quilt it however you wish. You could free motion quilt it. You could just quilt it straight. But right now I'm going to stabilize this. I'm going to clip it together, and then I'm going to just quilt it on either side of my lines, and then So I just wanted to show you how this has come off of my ironing board, my sort of 3-pieced bag front, okay? And I haven't yet to quilt that. And as you can see, I've ironed it down. I'm going to iron it a little bit more because some places the glue hasn't melted. But mostly I started in the middle with the fusible, and I worked my way out. And I've ironed this, and as you can see, it's really very, very nice. And then I've sandwiched the inside there, the fusible fleece, the fusible batting, and then, oh, there's a little tuck, that's okay. And then I put this back end off, and again, I've ironed that bit there, okay? So now I'm going to go over and I'm going to quilt this, and it really becomes textural. But before I do that, what I've done is I have laid my lining out on the table here, and I'm going to cut. If you remember, I was going to tell you what to cut. I'm going to cut my lining piece 24 inches wide. This is the width of this. This is about 23 and a half. I'm going to cut my lining about 24 inches, and then I'm going to cut my lining 36 inches. Now, this piece of fabric here, the size of our bag, this measures from the top to the bottom about 32, 33. I'm going to cut my lining a little bit bigger, and I will tell you maybe, about 36 inches. I can always make it smaller, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the lining a little bit bigger because let me just show you on my prototype here. When we go when I turned this over, when I put the ruffle on here, as you can see, I've turned the lining over, and then I've top stitched it to make sort of like a top edge. And so I needed some more fabric to do that. And so I'm allowing for that turnover. I might not have to have it so big, but I can always cut it down. So here's the bottom of my handbag, and then I'm just going to do it a couple more inches, and just straight along there, like that. And then I'm going to cut it just the size of the top of the bag itself. Just cut it like that. I match that edge up. Now, so my lining is cut, and again, that's approximately 24 by 36 inches for my lining. But I'm going to put my lining to the side right now, and I'm going to go and I'm going to iron that really well, and I'm going to go quilt my I just wanted to show you how I'm in the process of quilting this. It's only taken me a few minutes because again it's just straight lines. How textural this quilting is when it's done on this foam here. The seams, I'm not stitching in the seam, and those seams are really popping up. I suppose it would become as textural if you use one piece of fabric as opposed to the charm squares, but I think the seams really emphasize the quilting itself. So again, very, very, as you can see, I don't have a walking foot, and I basted, as it were, this little quilt. That's basically what it is: a top, a batting, and a backing. As it were, I fused it. So maybe this is where a really nice fusible fleece would come in, or a fusible interfacing, or even a spray basting if you're just using a batting. I've never used a spray baste. A lot of people do, but as you can see, I worked from the middle out, and it is straight on my what will be my handbag. I don't want any loosey-goosey type of fabric going on. I really wanted this sandwich here to become one, and with the glue, and then this with a fusible, and then this quilting stitch, as you can see, it's not shifting whatsoever. I don't even have a walking foot on there, and it's just quilting beautifully. Really, really textural. I just love it. And as I said, you can do this with just one piece of fabric. By all means, gets a little bit awkward, but you just have to sort of fold this around and then keep it in front of you. Again, I'm sitting right in front of the machine. I'm doing this more than 1/4 of an inch because I like the look of the quilting, maybe even 1/2 an inch. And then right off. And then I just have a few more lines to do, and look how lovely that raises and gives a lot of texture to. So here's my finished little bag, my bag front and back, and as you can see, there is the back of the inner lining to have made this little quilt sandwich. Now we're just going to, what we're going to do is what I did do is I just did a little tiny stay stitch along the top and along the bottom, along each end I should say, whatever your top and bottom is, not on the long side, because now what we're going to do, that's just to stabilize that fabric there, because then we're going to be putting the ruffle on, if you remember. But what we're going to do now is you're going to fold this in half. You're going to fold it in half, and it folds right in half between a charm square. But what we're going to do is you're going to pull the fabric out nicely, and as you can see here, your charm squares match up beautifully. Your side seam, we're doing 2 side seams from the top all the way down to the bottom here, and you're sort of splitting the difference on this bottom one. But if you see, I'm going to go over and I'm going to clip this, and my seams, my quilting and my seams match up beautifully. Charm square, charm square, charm square, half a charm square. So I'm just going to go over, starting at the top. I am going to stitch about 1/2 an inch in, and again, I'm not really catching any of that rubbish there, which I don't want to. I don't want all that bulk in my seam. So I'm going to do about 1/2 an inch on either side. On either side, matching these up, having clipped them together. They match up beautifully, as you can see. And then, make sure this gets folded out. And then I'm going to reinforce that seam. I am going to go over that maybe 3 times, because that's what I do, right? That's what I do. So just make sure this is tucked in nicely right there. Your side seam, your fabric is tucked in really nice, so you have a lovely side seam from top to the side. Sewn my side seams, and I have triple stitched them, and I've actually pressed these seams open. And now what we have to do is, there's my beautiful bag. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be boxing the corners. So what you have your lovely bag right in front of you. What you want to do is you want to pick it up and then put your hand in wherever this seam is. You can see you want that on the bottom of your bag. You want that charm square, you want that seam to be right in the bottom, right in the middle of that charm square. You will see it when you look in your bag. What I've done is I've made a nice point here, and then I've taken my ruler and I've gone in probably about 2 inches and it's thick. So with a marker, what I've done is I've just made a line right across there, about the 2 1/8, 2 1/4 inches. This is the size that your bottom bag is going to be. I want a nice wide bottom. So I've done it that, and that is exactly split in the difference. That will make a nice seam right there from the bottom of my bag. So I put my clips on there, and I've done that exactly the same way on either side of my bag. Now I'm going to go over, and on that line there, I am going to stitch, 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 of course, a million times, stitch, 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 and then I'll trim this right off here. So I'll have that trimmed off right there. I have stitched the box pleat, the bottom of my bag, and as you can see, I'm very pleased that this side seam here, the side seam there, is exactly in the middle of that bottom square there. That's the bottom of my bag, and as you see, I cut it, and I stitched it, and I cut it. I have two pretty identical pieces that I cut off. So that's my boxed bottom of my bag. And it stands lovely, really, really nice. And then when we do it, you can start to see my bag come together. It will fold over on these side seams here. It folds in, as I was showing you in the beginning. And there it's like a little bag there, like that. But now what we're going to do, and then it opens up to a big tote bag. What we're going to do now is we're going to put this aside, and I'm going to be making my, where is it? I'm going to be making my ruffles. Going to be making my ruffle, which is, I've used this fabric here. Now, I know there's a method of making ruffles that you gather it and then you pull up the gathering stitch. I can't be bothered with that. And I literally just pulled this, and I'm not quite sure. I think, I'm not quite sure what, yeah, this is going to be good. What I'm going to do is I have these two pieces of fabric, which are the width of fabric, which is however wide this is, or this is pretty long. Yeah, this is about 45 or so. So I'm going to take this 4" by 45 or 40", and I'm going to sew the two ends together. And I'm going to make a loop. I'm going to make the loop. I'm just going to sew these two ends together, right there and right there. And then I'm going to make this loop, and I'm going to then iron it in half. So I have a loop like that. Okay, and then I'm going to show you at my machine how I actually make my ruffle. When I'm making a ruffle, I like quite a full ruffle, at least twice the amount. And this is just twice the amount. So yeah, this is just twice the amount. So it may not even be as full as I want it, but that'll be okay. Because I don't have a method. I just sort of smash it under my presser foot, but I'll show you how I do that next. So right now, I'm going to iron both ends, make a tube, and then I'm going to press it in half really nice, and then I'll attach it to the top of my bag. As you see here, I've made my continuous loop of ruffle with the seam on each end. Now what I do, not real scientific, but what I do is, because my ruffle is facing down, I'm going to be putting the raw edges together, of course. I'm going to find my seam that I just sewed, and I'm going to find my side seam. And there's not a real, this is how I do it, there's not a real science to it. And I'm going to pin that on that open side seam. Okay, I'm just going to pin that side there, and I'm going to find this other side, the other seam of my loop. I'm going to find that side seam there. I'm just going to match up that seam of my loop to the side seam of my bag. I'll just put 2 pins on either side of that. Now, again, not a real science. I pull this up. You could measure it. I pull it up, and I find sort of the exact middle. I find the exact middle of my ruffle, okay, which is about there. And I go to the exact middle of my bag, which is about there, and I pin it. Now I realize when I do this, I pin it right there. So I realize that now I'm going to have to ruffle this piece from that side seam to the middle into there. So I'm going to go over to my machine, and then now I'm going to ruffle this piece, this fabric into that piece. And it's all even that way. I'm going to turn it over and do the exact same thing. That's the front or the back, whatever. I'm going to find the middle. Here's the middle of my bag. I'm going to find the middle of my ruffle, which is right about there. Pin it to the middle of my bag. So now I have all of these sort of quarters that I'm going to now start just on one side seam and push into this area here. So all of this fabric has to go there. And I'll just show you on my machine. Now, as you can see, I've already done 1/4 of my ruffle. And actually, I've only doubled this. I should have tripled it because it's not quite as a full ruffle as I like. I'm just gauging it, how I do it. Now, I started at one side seam. It's a fairly decent ruffle. It's okay. But my other ruffle was a bit a little bit fuller. But this was double. Maybe you could double it in half or triple it. Now I've come to the middle of my front of the bag, and as you can see, there's my marking. So I'm just going to take my pins out. I know that's the middle of my bag. And all I do is, because I've done this for a while, I just sort of ruck the fabric under the presser foot. There's no real rhyme or reason. I'm keeping my raw edge lovely with the top of the raw edge of the bag, and I sort of gauge it, how much fabric I have to use up before I get to my next side seam. Because it's just doubled, it's not an awfully lot. So I'm just going to push under a little bit at a time, making a quote ruffle. It's a ruffle, it's fine. Matching up that seam, keeping it so so you catch the whole thing, so it's not like that. Just holding it with your thumb and just making the ruffle yourself. By all means, if you wanted to gather this with a gathering thread, by all means, if you have a gathering attachment on your machine, you could make a beautiful gather. This is how I make my ruffles. Now I see I have about that much left, which I'm pretty okay, coming to my side seam. Again, I've been doing this. I was making ruffles for our daughter Malia for her little clothes forever, and this is how I used to do it. I'm a ruffle girl. It doesn't look like it, but I'll just push that under there, as you can see, and I'll come to this, making sure you don't catch underneath. I should have taken my bed off to have more of a free arm, but as you can see, now all my ruffles will be fairly uniform because I sort of did that quartering of it. So just push that under there. I have this much left to go in there. And then again, hopefully you can see that, I'm just neatly gathering, pushing it under the presser foot. And then that's that section done. That's that section done. So there. So I know I have the exact amount in each section of my ruffles, of the top of my bag. So I'm going to just go finish around my ruffles. Here is my ruffled bag, which I'm really pleased the way that turned out. By all means, I was thinking about it, by all means you could pin it, you could pin it in those corner sections. I didn't have to do that. Now what I want to do before I proceed is I wanted to put on, I didn't mention this in the beginning, I wanted to put on some feet for my bag here. And how these come, these are little brass colored ones that come, and you put them on the bottom of your bag. Just if you put your bag down, it keeps the bottom from getting too dirty. These are called Everything Mary Gold Purse Feet. There's a set of 4. And yeah, you can get them at any hobby craft store. Now, when I've done this before, what it is, it's a little, there's this little, like a little clasp like that. You can see. So this little clasp goes on the inside, and then you have this on the outside, like that, wherever you want them, and then you put this on the inside. And so what I will do, I'll take this off the card, and what you do is, I have a sharp seam ripper. Put these together. What I'll do is I can visually do it myself. Or if you want, no, let me do that. No, actually I don't want to do that. I'm going to just mark. I have 4 of them here. I'm just going to mark. I think I want, not right in the middle. I want one here, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what you do is, I have a very sharp little seam ripper. So what I do is, I'm going to put my hand in there, my fingers right there, and I'm just going to, with my seam ripper, be brave, I'm going to go right there, I'm going to go right in, I can feel it underneath, I'm going to make a little slit, just a little slit in all 3 layers, just a little one, and then I'm going to I might have to make it a bit bigger. And then I'm just gonna, yeah, I have to make it a little bit bigger. I can feel it on the inside. And then I'm gonna put both of the prongs right there, right inside. And then on the inside, I don't know if you can see this, on the inside then, there it is. I'm gonna take my little thing, I'm gonna put that right in the middle, and then I'm gonna open up those prongs and make it really lovely and tight, really lovely and tight. And again, you won't see this at all because it's on the inside of the lining. But there is my one little foot, nice and secure. It's not going anywhere. So I do the exact same thing. I sort of want one right about, see, that's about there. I'll eyeball it. I'll make my hole there. I can feel it on the inside, a little slit, a little hole, a little opening. I'll take my next one with those prongs squeezed together, and there we go. It takes just a minute, and it makes your bag. There's my inside prongs. I put it right in the middle, open them up a little bit, and then squeeze it down, squeeze it down. So as you can see, look how sort of professional that looks. Again, I'll put my hand in my bag, and I want one right about there to match. I can feel that hole. I can feel my seam ripper making that hole. Squeeze my prongs together. Squeeze them in there. I might have to make that hole a little bit bigger, because you're going through how many layers? You're going through the foam, you're going through the inner lining, there you go. And then, oh, where is it? Here we go. There's that one. And then on the, oops. And then hold it there tightly. And then on the inside, do that. So I'll just finish up my feet, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do next. So I'm at my ironing board, and I just wanted to show you, I'm now working on my handles of my bag. And what I've done is, out of my lining fabric, I have cut, because it's a little bit more substantial, I've cut 2 pieces of fabric 4 inches by 23 inches long. Okay, now what I had found in my belongings here, I just wanted to make these slightly stiffer, and I had run out of the fusible interfacing, so I found this bit of fusible fleece. So I've already fused that piece on a little bit less than half and not into the seam allowance, something like that. So I'm going to be fusing this piece of fusible fleece. It has a glue side down. This isn't the stabilizer I just used. This is not the foam stabilizer. This is a bit of fusible fleece. It has glue on one side. So with the glue side down, I don't like to iron onto anything fusible, even though the glue is underneath. So what I've done is I position that, it doesn't quite go to the ends. I position that on my tie, and what I'm going to do is that's where I'm just going to turn that over, and I'm going to see, I can feel that it's right where I want it to be. And this is, again, where I really press hard, according, again, to the manufacturer's guidelines. I really press hard to melt that glue on whatever fusible. But I don't like, even though the glue is on the underneath, I try it whenever possible, even with applique, to fuse it on the fabric side. That's just me. So I'm just going, these are my handles, again, about 4 inches by 23 inches. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just keep doing that a little bit more. I want to make sure that's really one with the fabric. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn it over, right sides together, pretty sides together, and I'm going to stitch about 1/4 of an inch along the edge here, just from the top down to the bottom. I'm going to do that twice because I want my handles to be nice and sturdy. But then I'm going to turn them, and then I'm going to top stitch them, which I'll show you. So I'm doing my handles, and what I've done is, as I was showing you at my ironing board, I put the right sides together of my 4-inch strip, and I sewed it together. And I sewed it, and there's the seam down the middle. I've already finished one, and I've already just top stitched that. The seam is right in the side there. You can't even see it. So I've top stitched on either side. I've done that, and maybe you guys won't have this, but I have what's called a loop turner. You just put it inside, you threadle it all the way to the top. You hook this little crochet hook on. It does the same thing as like a safety pin would do. Just turn something inside out. It's just an easy way to turn tubes or anything. So now I've ironed that really well, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to top stitch down one side my handle just to make it look pretty. Stitch it 1/4 of an inch away. I'm just going to go around there. Whoops. All these threads. Stopping at about 1/4 of an inch and then down the other side. I'm going to iron that well, really, really well. And there are my 2 handles. And now I'll show you how I put them on my bag. So I've just attached one set of handles to my bag, and what I've done is I've eyeballed about 3/4 of about 1/2 an inch away from this stitching on this block here, both ways, right? And then I've just attached that, being careful not to catch it on the back side. I've attached that right where the stitching of my ruffle is. So when my handle goes up like that, my ruffle goes down, and then my handle goes up, and it's tucked right up under that ruffle there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my bag around, and you have to be careful when you're attaching your handles that your handle isn't like that. You want it like, oh no, it's twisted. So when you put it on, you must make sure that your handle is in a loop like that, and that both ends are in a loop like that. So I'm going to find this stitching here, making sure it's a nice, my top seam is all lovely, and I'm going to clip that there, right there, and stitch that right along there, and I'm making sure my handle, and then I'm going to come to this edge right there, and clip that, and then I'm going to stitch that handle on, and again, keeping it nice and square and straight with the top, and reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. And then we're going to do the lining. Here's our little bag. It's coming along. Our nice tote. You could leave it like that. It's nice big tote, but we're going to put the lining in it right now. I put the handles on it. I put the feet on it. It's quite lovely. Now, what I have here is our piece of lining that we cut. Remember, we cut this a little bit bigger. I put it on my table here. I'm just going to take off this, just going to neaten up the edge right here. It's a little bit bigger, but I'll show you why I did that. Now, I folded it in half, okay, with the right sides together, and everything is lovely and square. So what because I've just made it slightly bigger, I'm just going to, there's a reason for me doing, I'm just going to put this right on the edge of that fold there, and I'm going to cut this in half. Just cut that little bit of fold, just cut that little bit of fabric off. So now we have 2 pieces of lining fabric, okay? We're going to deal with that one in a minute. So here's my piece of lining, and what I've done, and I haven't shown you, I've made a little pocket, and all I did was make the sides together, just a little piece of fabric that I've cut, put the seam on either side, and I've actually put in a little bit of the foam stabilizer, keeping this end open. I just pressed it open. I just pressed it closed. So here, facing me, is my pocket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find, just finger press it, I'm going to find the center of my lining fabric. And then I'm just going to eyeball, so on that line, I'm going to eyeball the center of my pocket. This is again facing me. It has a design that says love. It's about, I'll do it at about, let me see, on my little prototype here, I'm doing it about 3 inches down, 3.5 inches down from the center there. It's right in the center, and what I'm going to do, this is a nice finished edge, I'm just going to go along and I'm going to stitch it right down there, doing my bottom nicely, and then right up the side, and I'm going to double stitch that and finish it up, reinforce it at the top. Pocket on. It's a nice padded pocket for either a cell phone or for keys or for a nice wallet. Now what I'm going to do is my pretty sides together of my lining. I'm going to do exactly as we did with the bag. But if you remember with the bag, we just folded it up in half. We didn't have a bottom seam. I have to keep a bottom seam here. I have to keep this open from about here to here, stitching all the way around like that, from here to there, up the sides, and then we're going to box the corners exactly like we did the bag. So what I'm going to do is when I have to have an opening, I start here, and instead of just starting my seam that way and going up and that way and going up, what I do is I start over here and I do a little back stitch, back stitch, back stitch, and then I go off like that. Back stitch, back stitch, back stitch into the seam, and then I go. Because that way the fabric, when you're pulling it, all of this bag through, there's a lot of stress on this opening seam here. And if you just back stitch it here, that already turns in beautifully. It turns in beautifully, and then there's not a lot of stress on that seam because you've really stitched that well coming up from the bottom of the fabric and then going and do your seam. So I'm going to leave a decent size opening about from here to about there opening. And so I'm going to stitch from there over, go up, over, and up, over, and up. I've stitched my side seams and I've stitched my area right up there and over, up there and over. Now is a very good time to take your bag, to just leave your lining like that and take your bag, because what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making sure that the top of our bag from seam to seam matches the top of our handbag here from seam to seam. So as you can see, we've done that really good. There's the seam there, and which I'll be matching up, and there's the seam there, which I'll be matching up. So when I go to put the bag inside, when I sew this top seam, I know that my lining will fit my bag just lovely. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm not going to bore you again, I've bored you enough, is we're going to box the corners again, exactly like we boxed the corners of our handbag. You're going to make this so that your triangle's the exact same size on each side. You're going to go in about 2 inches, make your mark and stitch across, and then trim that off. Stitch, 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 and then trim that off. I have boxed the corners of my bag, my lining, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, with the wrong side facing out, I haven't turned that inside out yet, I'm going to threadle my bag, the right side, I'm just going to push that right in to my lining. I'm going to push that right into the lining, straightening it up on the bottom, making sure my handles are tucked in, and then I'm going to match up my side seams, the ruffles there. I'm going to match up that side seam with that side seam, and then I'm going to start clipping right, making sure my handles are tucked in and not in the seam. I'm going to stitch right around the top edge. And as you can see, my lining fits my bag really well. My side seams are here, my side seams are there. So I'm going to go and I'm going to clip this along, and I'm going to stitch it about, I'm going to make sure my ruffles all tucked down underneath and nice and straight. And then I'm just going to go right a little bit under that stitching, just run under the stitching of the ruffle, and I'm going to go around twice. And when I get to my handles, right here, I'm going to reinforce my handles where that is right there. Being very, very careful. I'm going to be very, very careful not to catch underneath. So I'm going to stitch all the way around. I have stitched my lining to my bag, and remember we had this nice big opening. I quite like this big opening here, because then without a lot of fuss, because I have a nice big bunch of quilted bag there, I can just pull my lining through very, very easily. And then what I can do is I will sew, I will go over and I'll stitch. See how that bag comes together, that seam? I just can pull, see that seam? It comes right together, and I would just top stitch that seam right along there. You'll never know it's inside. But what I will do now is I'm going to push this into the lining into the bag. Really lovely. Straighten it all out. And just by way of the seam, how I made the seams, you will see here that the lining on the top here of this bag sort of wants to come out of that seam. You see that? Now, do you remember when we made the lining slightly larger? So that is this little trim, as it were, is taking up that is not taking up the lining on the inside. So our lining still fits our bag beautifully and loose. You don't want the lining smaller than your bag, or else your bag won't hang well when you put things in. If anything, you want the lining a little bit bigger than your bag. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over and I'm going to just finger press this top edge, as it were. There's my pocket. Just go along there. There's my pocket in there. Beautiful. I'm just going to sort of finger press it as I go along to the machine. I'm going to just top stitch in that, right next to that seam, or in the seam, right there. Just, what is it, about 1/2 inch of trim, as it were. You see that? And it just fills that seam. The seam in there just fills that trim beautifully. You can see that. So the way we did it, it has sort of a self trim with the handles going up and the ruffle going down. So I'm just going to stitch right along there. You'll see it on the inside. That's fine. And just finish that off. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the magnetic clasp on, which I will show you how I do it, tucked underneath this ruffle here. And then I'm going to put the ties on. My bag is almost done, except for the ties on the side and my clasp. For my ties, and I've just stitched around at the top here, as you can see, and I've made my lovely sort of self-binding on that top edge, just so pretty. So what I'm going to do now, again, I'm not going to bore you. I've just cut 2 strips about 2 inches, and what I'm going to do, the width of the fabric, I'm just going to sew this, actually I'm going to cut these in half because we need 4 of them. I'm just going to cut these in half, about that much. And we need 4 of these, 2 for each side. So that's what? That's about 20 inches or so. And I'm just going to sew right sides together. And I'm going to finish off one end. I'm going to sew across here. I'm going to turn it and sew down. I'm going to turn it so that we have a finished edge. And then I'm not going to show you how I'm going to do it. I'm just going to sew these on. I'll take pictures of exactly where I sew them on to so that they tie. So I'm just going to do that now. Finished making my ties for the side of my bag, and I've finished the edges here. One down one side, and I have one neatened nice edge here. So what I'm just going to do is to make them all the same length, and to make sure that there's no straggly edges, I'm just going to cut off about 1/2 inch or so. And that is a raw edge, and we're going to attach it raw edge. We're going to attach it to the side of our bag on these two. There's a side seam and these 2 charm squares here. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our tie going that way and going that way, and then one at a time, making sure that your lining is lovely and smooth inside, because we're going to stitch it right through. Make sure your lining is nice and straight with that side seam there. I can feel it. It's not all bunched up. It's nice and square. I'm going to take my tie and I'm going to stitch it right between that charm square, right on that stitching there. Yes, this is a raw edge. I'm going to stitch it about 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to stitch it real close to that raw edge. Real close, back and forth, back and forth. Now, when you stitch something raw edge, I could tuck it in if I wanted to, but if you stitch something and you reinforce it, it's only going to fray until that stitching. So if I put that stitching real close, it'll be fine. So I'm just going to do 2 lots of stitching. next to each other, and then my tie gets tied like that, and you're never going to see the raw edge in between. So I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. This one's going to go that one. Here's my center. Here's my side seam. This one's going to go over here, so that then when they're there, then they make a beautiful tie on the side of our bag. Here is my almost finished little bag. Isn't it pretty? My little shabby chic bag. I put the ties on it, and it comes into the middle, as you can see, and it just has a lovely bottom with my feet on there, and my ties, which I add a little bit of color to, and I put these, where I was saying, on either side of the side seam of those 2 charm squares, and you can make them as loose or as tight as you want. So now I'm going to loosen them, because the last thing I'm going to do, or the second to the last thing I'm going to do, is I'm going to put the snap on the inside of my bag. There's my lining, there's my pocket. It's nice and straight, lovely. Oh, I did do a little bit of top stitching on the top band there of that top little facing there. So now what I have, again, you're going to need a sharp seam ripper, and again, this is the same thing, Everything Mary, 3 magnetic snaps. There were yellow, pink, and white. I used the white ones on my other one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pink, and I'm going to take these off of the back of the cardboard. Oops, I'm going to use the pink. I took the yellow off. I'm going to use the pink, and you have 2 sections of snaps for our bag, okay? We have them just like the other ones, just like the feet, but these come with 2 prongs and a magnetic backing. Now, the reason I'm doing it, which I like to do it on this, because it's hidden under my ruffle. If I wanted to put the snap on another application, you have to sort of do it before you construct everything, because this is going to show. But I'm not bothered about that showing on the outside here because of my ruffle, as you will see when I do it. Because the snap goes on the inside, it goes on the inside to the inside. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I see exactly the center of my bag, which is right there on this charm square here. And I'm going to on the outside, I'm going to make sure that this is going to go on the inside like this, but I'm going to cut it on, I'm going to cut these little slots so it's hidden on the outside. So I cut one there, right through all the layers, right, be brave. There's my cut right there. And then right next to it, now this is going to go on the inside, but you'll see what I'm doing. So right there, I've just centered it, a slit, hold it together, and then on the inside, I slot that metal through. You see? There's my slotted metal through. Real easy. And then I just put that on, and again, I push those down, push that down real hard, real hard, and then it's hidden on this application, and there it is on the inside of my bag, right? So now what I want to do is I want to make sure that when it's clasped right up there, right there, that my opposing side is right where it should be. So I'm going to measure, I'm sort of going to figure out that I want that to be, I want to match up my top there, my snap to be right about there. And that's about right. Again, see how it is right in the middle. So I'm going to do it on the inside here, making sure my ruffle's away. I'm going to make a slot there, make a slot there, and then I can see where my slot is, there and there. And then I'm going to turn that around, and here's this one. I'm going to turn that around and put that right there and squeeze that. Squeeze that down real good. And again, it's hidden. There's an extra one. Oh, that was to my yellow one. It's hidden right, it's right in the middle, and then there's my snap. There's my snap. Nice right there. So now my bag is done. If I want it big, that's the way it looks. That's the way it looks with the snap done. Or if I wanted it small, I tuck it in with my ties. And there it is, all finished. So there's my lovely little bag. I hope you love it. There it is, both sides, nice shabby chic. So you can make it a handbag or a large tote with a magnetic catch. So I hope you love this little tutorial. The last thing I'm going to do, which I won't show you, I'm going to cover a piece of cardboard and maybe a bit of foam and fit it nice and tight right down in there so my bag sits really nice. Even though it sits flat now, boxed with my corners, I'm going to make it really nice and boxed there. So I hope you love my bag, folks.